a lot of people's questions is like, how did I come up with a seasoning? Not only how did you come up with it, but what's your background? Well, I went to Trinity High School, and I wasn't the, yeah, salty. But I wasn't the best student. I didn't even take an ACT, SAT. I wasn't planning on going to college. I was going to be a professional pool player. That didn't happen. One of the first things, once my professional career started, after like my first professional tournament, I got in a head-on collision and it broke my bone in my hand, and I couldn't make my bridge anymore. So it was like, okay, what's your plan B? And I was like, well, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna give this a whirl. Well, it's funny because this is real estate, and I actually went to Lexington Community College, and I was like, I'm gonna go to be a real estate agent. Well, after I found out that I wasn't a good student at Trinity, and I had to go through like 2 years of classes that didn't even count as credits, and I actually made the dean's list. I applied myself, and then I was like, oh, my brother was in insurance, and he was at home killing it. And I was like, I'm gonna go home and sell insurance. Like, I don't want to keep going to school, wasting my time. I want to go make money, and so that's what I did. Insurance didn't work. And so then I moved on to selling industrial electronics. So I was always in sales, and I was selling industrial electronics. I got an awesome job with engineers, and I got to travel semi the country, about a 200-mile radius, going into manufacturers, seeing manufacturing equipment, and showing them how we could fix it for them. So that was cool. It was a super job, awesome job, and I also sold some cars in the time being. I did some door-to-door sales, and I was actually, for this door-to-door sales job, I was like top 5 in the country. So I was pretty good at it, but then when I found out that my sales that I thought I sold and I never got paid for it, I was like, well, that ain't gonna work. So, I always had this sales background, and then I went into bartending because I wanted something different. And so I was bartending, and after a few years of that, the money was always great, but I was like, I can't do this the rest of my life. Like, I got to do something different. And so I was always thinking like these big ideas, and I never had enough money to like chase any of these dreams that I had. So it was one day that, going all the way back to when I was in college, I came up with this chicken recipe. So every time I would make bone-in skin on chicken, I would whip up this recipe, put it on the chicken, and everybody always loved it. So anytime I made chicken, I would make this recipe. And then so flash forward to the bartending, I'm always spinning my wheels. How am I going to change my life? How am I going to get out of here? And then I brought in the chicken one day that I would make and gave it to a guy that was just sitting at the bar, 5 o'clock on a Monday. And I was like, you hungry? He's like, yeah. I was like, try this chicken. And he took one bite and was like, I remember him looking down. He looked up at me. He's like, why aren't you selling this? This is the best chicken. He said, best chicken ever. And I was like, Danos. And I was like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. So that was literally like January 2015. That was 5 o'clock on a Monday. So I had to work like a 12-hour shift with, I want to get home and like start Googling how do I start this business. So literally it took me a year and a half to start the business, and I had $8,000 is what I started with. It's pretty cool. It took me a year and a half to package the product. And so, that year and a half of finding out FDA requirements, finding a graphic designer, the little dude on the label, people thought it was like clip art, but I'm like, no, I actually paid a guy in the kitchen $100 to draw that for me. And everybody that I worked with at the time at the bar thought I was crazy paying somebody $100 to draw this little character. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be my logo. But, so yeah, it took me a year and a half to package. And this is what I was talking to Michael with on the phone when we talked a couple weeks ago about doing this. And it was like I spent all my money into this product, and then when I first got it onto the market, into like Paul's Fruit Market and stuff, I started to figure out why people wouldn't buy it. I'm like, oh, because it had just a little pinch of sugar in it. Like literally the sugar was do we have the slideshow? If you can go to like the first bottle, it should be like the first thing that pops up. So that was my original packaging. And yeah. But you can see it didn't say low sodium on it real big. It didn't say no sugar on it because it actually had a pinch of sugar. If you looked at the nutrition panel, it actually said 0 sugar, but on the ingredients at the last thing it had sugar. And so when I'm out there selling it to people and, people are trying, they're like, that's amazing. But then they look at it and they're like, oh, there's a little sugar in it. I don't do sugar. I'm sorry, I can't buy it. Or maybe it was too expensive because it was a bigger packaging. I learned how to pivot, and literally, like, I was with a girl at the time that like watched me like go through like all of this like struggle to get to here. And then when I got to here and I found out like, okay, this is not ready for the market. It looks very farmer's market-ish right there. It doesn't look like national product. And so it wasn't just the look of it, but it was also the feedback that I was getting. So I was like, okay. And that's when I pivoted and like, how can I find my niche and like build my value? And basically my value was go low sodium, put it real big, and no sugar. So it's like all your keto people, anybody that's healthy, you want all natural ingredients. And then, so like I did that, and then I was like, why is there no other seasoning companies out there marketing like this? Like, why aren't they doing it? Am I doing something wrong? Like, am I going against FDA requirement or, regulations? I wasn't, it's just nobody chose to market their product that way. And that's what made me totally different than everybody else. And so I guess, and not only was, I guess when I started Danos, it wasn't to start a low sodium all natural brand. That's just me pivoting and figuring out how am I going to get more attention? How am I going to build the value in the product that I have? So when I came out with my new packaging, if you can click to that next one, well, that was me when I would sample in the little stores like Paul's and stuff. And go to the next one. That's first State Fair. Yep. And click. So that's not even the bottle that we have today, but that's the one that I spent, after a year and a half of getting to the original packaging, then I spent another 8 months it was to get to that packaging. And that's when I went and I did my first little flea market. And I was like, I'm going to sell $1,000. And I ended up selling like 3,500. And I was like, this is it. I was like, this is what I got to do. So I literally traveled the country, finding every little flea market, every little trade show I could, and I would just go sell the seasoning. I would literally load my truck up to the rim. Me and Toothpick Timmy, I don't know if y'all know, some of you know who he is, but we're trying to get him not to be a toothpick anymore. We're on a weight loss journey, so that's cool. Well, we're trying to get him to be a toothpick. That's what I meant to say. But
too much chicken.
too much chicken. But so yeah, I got to that packaging. That was June 1st, 2017 that I got to the new packaging. And so I literally traveled the country and for 3 years, and then COVID hit. And I went from $40,000 my first year to $120,000 my next year to $250,000. And then I was on schedule to do like 500. So I was like doubling every year. And then COVID hit, and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, I can't travel. Where's my money? I'm not going to get that much money out of Paul's Fruit Market. You got to sell a lot of bottles just to make $1. And so it was another pivot point. It was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I was already making like some videos on Facebook and Instagram, but I was never getting attention. But I was paying attention to other social media, and there was Gary Vandercheck out there, and he's like, if you got a brand or product and you're not on TikTok, you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do TikTok. So I started doing TikTok, and literally after like a couple of weeks, I was like, man, this isn't working either. I only need to do $200 a day to survive this COVID, however long it's going to go. And next thing I know, I did this crab cake video. I wasn't even going to make the video because I was kind of just like exhausted. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I did it like with one hand. I'm like, oh, I'll take this. I'm going to make a dang good crab cake. And I like just filmed it all with one hand, made it. And it upset like half of Maryland. Everybody's like, where's the Old Bay? That's not how you make a crab cake. But so like all the comments, but it went like half a million views or something. So like all these comments, like 80-90% of them were negative, but the sales went up. They're like $1,000. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep creating controversy, right? And so that's what was working. It was like, shows people how to do something they've never seen before. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know it's just seasoning, but it is different. It's different than any other seasoning on the market. And the low sodium, marketing factors, like you can use more. So I started hitting them with the big bottle, showing them how to pop a trigger finger, because my big bottle, I pop it and the seasoning sprays out, and people thought that was cool. And it was just like, you know, then like after like the sales started coming in, all the comments started changing from 80% negative comments to like it was all good. Like everybody was loving it because they were finally trying it. And so then, you know, after all this struggle and this like 3 years of grind time and, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul just to pay my next bill, I always joke around with my partner. And I'm like, one day when I write a book, I'm gonna call it 100 overdrafts later, because it was seriously like that. But yeah, after, you know, all that grind and like seeing it through and having the vision to never give up, I guess, you know, never give up, believe in yourself, believe in your product. I don't know if in real estate, you are selling a product, you're selling yourself. And so, I don't know, I do have a few words, like in our office, we have a whiteboard and we got a couple quotes up there that I put up there. And one of them was Steve Jobs, and it's like, you know your core values and never steer away from them. And the second one is from Mark Cuban. It's know what you're good at and how it fits in your business life cycle. And then the third quote is my quote, and that's the best salesman is the one that knows how to listen. So for real estate, know how to listen, know how to figure out people's problems. If you can figure out their problems, kind of like the way I did, you know, all these people with high blood pressure and diabetics, well, guess what? I gave them a solution. So, you know, other than it being great, there's also, you know, ways to build the value in your product. And, you know, why do you do what you do? Do you do it for the money? Do it because you love it. So everybody's got some nanos here. Who's got a question? I'm sure some people got some questions.
You making us crab cakes?
Another day. Sure. I didn't bring the big bottle with me. That's the big, because I got a big 20-ounce bottle, and when I squeeze it, it pops.
So, like, technically, when you were just marketing yourself on social media, you were just using your phone and you didn't run ads or promote anything?
I tried, and they always flopped. Like on, you know, Facebook, I would throw like, I'm gonna throw $200 at this one and put it in Chicago, and it got 200 views and not one inquiry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you like showed up on my feed during COVID.
Yeah.
Like, who is this guy? I'm like, oh, he must have paid a whole bunch of money.
Well, we started pumping, like once, I partnered with a marketing company. So I was the sole owner, it was just me. Toothpicks helped me travel the country. And so when things started to go really well on TikTok, I partnered with a marketing company here in town, Crosby Interactive. And at first it was just gonna be like a percentage of revenue. And then I was like, well, I was always a horrible like business manager, like managing the money and the paperwork and all that. I didn't want to do that. That's not what I'm good at. I'm good at being the face of the brand, showing people what's good. And so it was basically the perfect marriage that, you know, he ran a marketing company for 20 years and in other businesses, billion-dollar business before. And it's like, well, it was the perfect marriage to partner with a marketing company. And we were also very aggressive. We put 20% of all revenue back into marketing every month. So the more we grow, the more we're putting back into marketing. We'll make money one day. So.
Do you think you would have been successful if you never came up with that? Like, were you just gonna? Or do you think it was the fact that you came up with the perfect combination?
Well, like I said, I was always a dreamer. I always had a vision. I mean, hell, I got 20 different ideas I could tell you, but they all probably cost $1 million to start.
Right.
This costed $8,000. It was like, okay, I can do that. That's why, like, when the aha moment happened, I was like, I can do this. Like, I got $8,000. But then I found out real quick I needed a lot more. But yeah. But yeah, and we just went nationwide in Walmart and Kroger, like literally and BJ's and a bunch of other stores. So we're going to be in, literally by the end of next month, we'll be in 10,000 grocery stores.
Wow.
All right.
So,
Whenever you began creating what it is now, the final composition of the seasoning, how long did it take, or how many different tries? Like, what was the add a pinch of this, pull that out? Was it literally like that, or was it?
I literally, like, before I ever put it in the original packaging. Oh, there's our team today. But before I put it in the original packaging, I probably tweaked it 100 times. And literally what I would do, I'd have my core recipe. I knew I started with like Lowry's garlic salt, and then I added all these other stuff. And I would make literally, like, I knew what the recipe was, but sometimes they would have like a weird aftertaste, or the first bit of flavor wasn't there. So I was like literally messed with the same recipe, probably tweaked it 100 times. And I remember having I'd go buy like 10 chicken legs, and I'd make 10 different batches. This one's just got a little bit more cumin. This one's just got a little bit more of this. This one's just this. And every 15 minutes I would have a fresh chicken drumstick coming out so I could like try it. You know what I mean?
So you knew when you tasted it, like in your mind it was like, that's it, whenever that ended up being.
Well, then I would take it, I thought I had that's it. And then I took it over to a family function, and I cooked like 20 lobster tails. And my brother was like, there's way too much rosemary, way too much rosemary. And I'm like, but that's what makes it different. He's like, but it's just too much. And then like I had some other people, I'm like, you think this is too much rosemary? And they're like, yeah, it's a little powerful. So then I had to like totally like reworking on it again. But it was always just, I had the base. It was just figuring out to make it perfect. You know what I mean?
2 more questions.
Yeah.
So it seems like you started with it on chicken.
Yeah.
Then I've seen you do it on fish, beef, other things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to tweak it any to make it universal for all the sort of I don't know, meat groups?
It's crazy because when I said I was in that relationship, I remember this like it was yesterday. The girl I was with at the time was a vegetarian, but she would eat fish sometimes. Well, I'm like, Danos is a chicken seasoning, right? Well, one day I had this like piece of tilapia, and I was like, I'm gonna put some Danos on this and try it. So I like threw it in a pan, and I remember cooking it, and it seared up perfect and had an awesome sear on it. And I took one bite, and I'm like, oh, I'm changing the world. Like I'm like, this is next level. And I like ran into the other room, and I'm like, you have to try this. Like one little bite. She's like, I don't want to. I'm like, just one bite, just one bite. Like it's crazy. And she took one bite. She's like, oh, like that is crazy good. So then I found, so the original packaging, well, you probably can't even see it up there, but it said chicken, fish, and more. Well, then I met a guy who was a food broker, which I didn't know what brokers were when I started my business. Now I know all about them. But met a food broker, and he was like, why does it just say chicken, fish, and more? He's like, why didn't it say steak and pork? He's like, I'm like, because it's not a steak and pork seasoning. He's like, well, have you tried it? I was like, not really. And he's like, because I put it on a steak the other day, and it was the best steak I ever had. And then so I was like, well, I gotta go get a steak now and go get some pork chops. And then I was like, it was that whole like pivoting thing where I said, I spent all this time that I thought I had it right, but I didn't. It was like way off of where it needed to be. But that whole another 8 months of just getting that like market, little taste of the market to see what I needed to change, just set it up for success.
Last question, at least from me. Because I was there that day with Michael, it was me, you, him, and Eddie Burke. So I remember that, and so I've always followed it. I don't think then you didn't have the Yum Yum Get You Some wasn't there yet. When and why did you add that?
We had, when me and Toothpick were traveling the country, we had all kinds. Right. I should have got him to come in here, but when we were traveling the country, it was, we had so many sayings. I'm not familiar with your financial situation, but you get some of this, you'll be flavor rich. And it's like, flavor rich, there's yum yum. We used to say it's that yum yum get you some, because what we had to do is, people have never seen us before. We're in Virginia or wherever. People have never seen us before, and they're walking by. So how do we get their attention? Well, not only are we trying to get them by their nose because we're putting the smell out there cooking the chicken, but they'll be, 95% of people are like, no thanks. They just don't want to try it. They don't trust you. They don't want to try somebody cooking chicken, putting it on a toothpick, or they feel like they got to buy something. So our job was to get them to try it, because we knew all we had to do is get it in their mouth and they're going to love it. And so literally, like, we would sell probably 40% of the people that actually tried it. So the Yum Yum Get You Some, all of our sayings had been there. And I'll tell you, you know, things happen for a reason, right? Like, I had this seasoning in my back pocket for 15 years, never even thought to package it. The coolest thing that happened with Danos to me, you know, because I'm like, this is the best seasoning, and then it's low sodium and it's all natural, and I'm like, all these marketing aspects. And then when I went and did my first flea market, and I did $3,500, and then the next show was I did the Kentucky State Fair, and I remember this little old lady standing there, and she was trying a piece of. I had mashed potatoes, and she was trying it, and she was like, "Oh, this is dang good," and I'm like, and it's low, so I'm showing her the bottle. I'm like, it's low sodium, it's all natural, no sugar. She's like, no, it's dang good. And I'm like, yeah, you can get 2 for 10, and, you know, 3 for whatever. And she's like, no, honey. And she's like pointing behind me at my banner. She's like, damn good. And I'm like, mind blown. I'm like, you damn right. And it's like, you don't know till you Dano. Dantastic, Danomite. And it just, I mean, it was fun. It was, and that's when it hit me that Danos was like really something super special. That, like, it's not just the recipe, it's not the fact that it can change people's lives, but the marketing aspect of just being like a good name was great too.
Thank you, Dana, for
Thank you. Appreciate it.